On this day of giving thanks, we turn to a story about the men and women who defend this country, American soldiers. A study released in April found that nearly 20% of the service members who've returned from Iraq and Afghanistan report symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder or depression, some 300,000 in all. It's a stunning statistic, but what may be even more stunning is that despite their suffering, some of these men and women are being sent back to the front, as Bob Woodruff reports.
The memorial service for Corporal Chad Oligschlager was bathed in the precision of military ritual. But this young veteran of 2 tours in Iraq did not die on the battlefield. His last days were spent at a Marine base in California in a medicated haze.
When they told me that, he was alone and had been on the floor, he was just laying on the floor. I just didn't want him to be alone.
Chad joined the Marines in 2004 and was sent to Iraq at the age of 19.
It's the scariest place on earth. I mean, that's how he described his first tour. We knew that he was dealing with all sorts of demons and issues and visions, and he was losing it.
His medical records reveal that after his first tour, Oligschlager sought help for depression and alcohol abuse, and a military doctor recommended inpatient treatment. Instead, his family says Chad was accused by superiors of faking mental illness and soon after dispatched to Iraq a second time.
He pretty much got rejected. They told him, he was only asking for help now because he didn't want to go to Iraq.
A Marine Corps spokesman declined to comment on those allegations, but said in a statement that refusing a Marine mental health help is out of line with Marine Corps values and cannot be condoned or tolerated.
The Pentagon and the commanding generals, they're urging soldiers, they're urging their Marines to seek help. And we've been seeking help for a year and a half.
Though significant progress has been made in treating the mental health needs of the troops, after 7 years of war, the military is stretched so thin that thousands of mentally impaired warriors are returning to the front.
People who have psychiatric symptoms, who are actively symptomatic with post-traumatic stress disorder or depression, are being sent back to that very situation that caused their PTSD and depression.
And in several cases examined by ABC News, the deployments stand in direct violation of the Pentagon's own policies, as in the case of Michael DeVlieger, who suffered a mental breakdown prior to his second deployment.
I was violent, I was angry, I would cry at the drop of a hat.
He was hospitalized for 11 days with acute psychosis and major depressive disorder.
He was still very shaky, very nervous.
And he was not really recovering as far as you could tell?
No, not as far as I could tell.
Upon his release, he was given prescriptions for 3 psychiatric medications.
I was given a follow-up appointment for that Monday, as if the treatment was going to continue as it was suggested to me that it would.
In fact, Pentagon policy required that DeVlieger or any soldier with a mental health disorder demonstrate a pattern of stability without significant symptoms for at least 3 months prior to deployment.
That's not what happened.
He left 18 hours after coming out of the hospital.
18 hours after he got out of the hospital?
18 hours after coming out of the hospital, he deployed to Iraq.
Were you prepared?
No. Not even remotely close.
Fort Campbell officials declined to comment, except to say that the base where DeVlieger was deployed had a combat stress unit that was available to the soldiers. But DeVlieger says no one in Iraq followed up.
I mean, I'd probably have to throw on my weapon and all my gear and cross over the berm myself to prove that I had some sort of issue, or crawl into a porta potty and, put my weapon in my mouth. It seems to be the only way anybody seems to get any attention over there.
And DeVlieger is just one of an estimated 300,000 troops that have symptoms of PTSD or depression.
How many of those 300,000 have been sent back to the war?
We can't give you exact figures on that. I'm sure many of those have been sent back to war, but you have to remember that PTSD is a treatable disorder, and you can have symptoms and still do your job quite well.
Colonel Elspeth Ritchie is the Army's Chief of Behavioral Health.
I certainly would not want to lump all soldiers who have had symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder and say they are impaired and cannot do their job. I don't think that would be very stigmatizing.
To help maintain the fighting force, the military has increasingly turned to medicating its warriors. An Army survey of its troops last year found that 12% of soldiers in Iraq and 17% in Afghanistan reported taking antidepressants, anxiety drugs, or sleep aids while deployed.
I'm a zero tolerance guy. I don't believe it should be done at all.
Bart Billings, a psychologist who served 30 years with the Army Reserves, worries about the growing reliance on medications.
The black box on the label talks about side effects, suicide, poor judgment. And it's really not a good idea to put people in a battle situation where the side effects of medication they're taking could be suicide.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I think at one point we counted 29 different drugs within like a 6-month period of time, trying to find something that would work for him.
Shelby Barrett was shocked when her husband Chad was shipped out from Fort Carson, Colorado for a third tour of Iraq, despite a medical record that included a diagnosis of PTSD, a suicide attempt, and a commander's recommendation that he be removed from the United States Army and receive the treatment he needs.
When he got on that plane and left, they knew that he was not 100%.
A month into that third tour, Sergeant Barrett committed suicide. He overdosed on the very medications the Army had prescribed to help him cope.
I think he became another boot on the ground, another number. He wasn't Sergeant Barrett anymore. He was just another soldier deployed with mental issues, and he was performing a job for them.
Fort Carson officials declined comment.
Clearly, in 1990, if someone was on antidepressant medication, we sent them back to the United States.
Paul Reagan, a former Navy psychiatrist who served in the first Gulf War, says he is seeing a dramatic change in the way the military treats its warriors battling mental health problems.
Now they're given antidepressant medication or anti-anxiety medications and sent back to the field. The generals and the admirals are trying to win armed conflict. And this may be painful for the public to think of, but to some degree, individuals are cannon fodder. If you're able to accomplish the mission, and you've got X number of deaths or wounded, you lose a leg or you lose your mind, that's just the price of going to war.
Corporal Chad Oligschlager paid the ultimate price. He died in May of an apparent overdose.
I think if they had monitored him, gave him the help he needed, instead of just throwing medication at him, he would still be here.
The day before he died, Chad's fiancée picked out her wedding dress.
This didn't have to happen. He didn't have to be there. We don't want to let him go like this. We want to make him the poster child for PTSD if we have to get him out there. And he would be proud.
For Nightline, this is Bob Woodruff in New York.
A shocking and painful reality of war. Our thanks to Bob Woodruff, and we'll be right back.